It looks like we are live. Let's make sure. We're checking all the social medias, and so far we're being up. Now we're there. There we go. Now we're live, and we're going live on Instagram, and we're live on Facebook and X. Outstanding. Well, this evening we have a lot to talk about. I'm sure everyone is very much interested in the developments going on in the tropical Atlantic. There isn't much going on around the northern mid-Atlantic. I know that we need rain, I know, but not this time. Not from this storm and not in this weather pattern. We'll discuss why in the upcoming discussion. So let's first start off with the tropics at large. We have, and see if I can pronounce this right, 'cause I've been checking out the pronunciation. I'm doing good tonight already. Is Helene is out here. I think I got that right. And we have another disturbance out here. This disturbance has a good chance of becoming a depression in about 48 to 66 hours. But don't worry. This one is running right into this trough here, and it's going to get kicked right out into the Atlantic. So we have a couple of tropical waves to watch outside of Helene that have a chance to develop, but in the long run are just going to get kicked right out into the northern Atlantic. We typically expect this for this time of year. There's also this feature up here that could actually pick up some subtropical characteristics and be named as a subtropical storm. So certainly the potential of piling up some names over the next couple of days to basically pad the list a little bit, trying to get us to a near normal season. But other than that, all eyes are on the Gulf of Mexico. And so let's zoom right in. First of all, the latest observations coming in at 7 p.m. Central, which is 8 p.m. Eastern. Winds are sustained at 85 miles per hour. It's moving to the north at 12 miles per hour. Pressure is down to 974 millibars, which is pretty strong for a Category 1 hurricane. It is 430 miles to the southwest of Tampa, Florida. And it means business. Now, the forecast here from the NHC is to take Helene and take it towards the Florida Panhandle, and at a pretty quick pace. So tonight we're going to discuss why is it going to be moving so fast and the environment that would support this to become a major hurricane. So first, let's look at the satellite picture. And what we have here is the low-level center right about here. It's now moving away from the Yucatan Peninsula. It did ingest some dry air, and this is one of the things that I warned about with this storm, is that if we get some dry air mixed in here, that could slow down the intensification rate, so that could be a good sign. The problem is that there are signals here with the way that the convection's popping up here and here and here, and then wrapping in around the low-level center here. There are signs that dry air is going to get mixed out. And once that dry air gets mixed out, it takes about 6 hours, then you can start to see rapid intensification. Now, the reason why you can see rapid intensification is not so much what we're seeing here with the thunderstorms, which are impressive, but the overall structure. This storm right now is exhibiting perfect outflow here. So what does that mean? Well, let's look at it in terms of an engine, right? When you have an engine, you have an exhaust. If you clog up that exhaust, the engine doesn't run very well and it backfires and then breaks, right? When it comes to a hurricane, that exhaust are these clouds out here, these feathery clouds. What's happening here is that as the latent heat is rising in the atmosphere, it has to be exhausted out. So more water vapor can be lifted and the latent heat release process continues. So what you're seeing here is the exit of that used up water vapor, that latent heat release. And so as a result, what you're able to do is allow for that warm core low to strengthen and grow in size and in intensity. And that is essentially what we see here. Once that dry air gets driven out, the structure is in place for this storm to rapidly intensify. Now, if it was anywhere in the Atlantic, there would be no guarantee that it would reach a category 2 or 3 or 4, right? But because it's in the eastern Gulf of Mexico, this storm is going to be moving over some high octane fuel, as in the very warm waters in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. So plenty of energy, favorable structure, looks pretty good, but there's more to it. Take a look at the water vapor satellite picture. This is a unique setup. And the reason why it's a unique setup is because of the position of the upper level low here. Now what's happening is that the polar jet stream and subtropical jet stream are interacting, and a piece of that is starting to break off and form this upper level low. The upper level low clashes with this ridge here, which means that there's no place for this storm to go but straight towards the Florida Panhandle. And so as that upper level low continues to mature, it's going to move steadily towards the Panhandle. And that is a problem because let's say the winds get up to 100 miles per hour. Okay, we're just going to round it to a nice, easy number. If this storm is moving into the Panhandle at 20 miles per hour, then what you have to do is add 20 miles onto the speed of the winds on the eastern side of the storm. So that could drive quite a bit of water and create some major storm surge problems for anywhere to the east and along the center of that eye, which is a big problem. So when you have fast-moving tropical systems like this, the good news is that they lift through quickly. The bad news is that they enhance your winds on the eastern side of the storm, and they enhance the storm surge on the eastern side of the storm. So this is a major concern. The other factor here is that the setup of these upper level winds, and let me zoom in real fast. This setup here, this environment, supports very strong what we call divergence and diffluence aloft. Why is that important? Well, when you have a lot of divergence and diffluence aloft in the upper atmosphere, we're talking about 500 millibars, 250 millibars, 300 millibars, way up in the atmosphere, it allows the exhaust of the storm to become enhanced. You enhance the lifting in the entire storm. So this environment, perfectly aligned, sets up the potential here for rapid intensification from a Category 1 hurricane to a Category 3 or 4 hurricane in a very short period of time. If this upper level low was positioned a little bit further to the east, then instead of strong divergence and diffluence, you'd get strong shear, southwesterly shear, and it would rip the storm apart. So timing and position in this setup is pretty much everything here, as it always is in meteorology. And the setup of the trough as it is right now this evening tells us that, hey, as this is lifting north, it's going to have ample opportunity to grow into a monster storm and really impact the Gulf Coast. At the same time, as this upper level low interacts with Helene, it's going to be interacting with a warm core and cold core systems. Okay, and so this interaction leads to a very interesting, unique setup for the southeast, in that the low pressure system rapidly transitions to an extratropical storm. Your wind field is going to rapidly expand. So in most cases where you're just having a landfalling hurricane, by the time the storm gets into, let's say, Atlanta, Georgia, for example, or towards South Carolina, it's significantly weakened. But in this situation, because it's going to be transitioning to an extratropical storm, that wind field, which is still going to be pretty strong, is not going to weaken as rapidly and expand. So you're talking about 50, 60, 70 mile per hour sustained winds moving all the way into northern Georgia. Combine that with the clash of all this tropical moisture with this polar air mass dropping into the Mississippi River Valley, intensive, impressive rainfall throughout the southeast. So you got significant damage down here towards the Florida Peninsula. I believe, who plays down there? Is it the Giants or the Eagles play down there on Sunday? No, it's most likely going to have to be moved. Not because it's going to be raining anymore, but because the damage going on around that area, it's not going to be pretty. You're not going to have the ability to play a football game or any sporting event for that matter with that type of impact around the region. I mean, if they do, it's a travesty, because really a lot of these resources should be diverted towards making sure everyone's okay rather than making sure it's security for a football game. So I'm just saying. Meanwhile, a lot of Georgia and South Carolina and Alabama and North Carolina and Tennessee, and you could throw in Kentucky as well, because the Appalachians with all this moisture is going to produce massive flooding. We're talking about rainfall amounts that look like something like a snowfall map, of 6 to 12 inches of rain. And that's going to produce some massive flooding. Now, why isn't this impacting us? Great question, because a lot of people are saying, oh, this is going to come up the coast. Well, you can see that answer in the 850 millibar temperatures. We're going to have a block, and that block is going to feature this maritime air mass, and that maritime air mass is being driven into our region via high pressure. So when we take a look at 500 millibar heights here, this is under European ensembles, you get your negative NAO pattern once again. This setup here builds this ridge while this upper level low intensifies with the introduction of the moisture from Helene. And you end up with a very impressive area of subsidence and a stationary front. So what you end up with is sky cloud cover, a pesky shower here and there, but no threat of any of that heavy rainfall pushing any further north, because the upper level low is just simply blocked to the south. It just never advances northward. And you could thank the evolution in our weather pattern with this sustained negative NAO pattern. We get a little bit of reprieve for the end of the week while the weather pattern readjusts and reloads. But this is essentially why we don't see that rainfall, and why we're having such a difficult time seeing rainfall this fall so far, is that the blocking pattern is such that it's just keeping us dry. 500 millibar, the PVA, again, there you could see the hurricane making that landfall, rapidly getting absorbed into the upper level low. It's moving pretty quickly too, so that's one good thing with this heavy rainfall. It's going to be very heavy, but the storm moves through very, very quickly. So it's got good and bad in both, because it's good because the storm leaves. It's bad because it's going to drop a lot of rain in a very short period of time with some massive flooding around the region. But you can see for us in the northern mid-Atlantic, that ridge axis is pretty much keeps us safe and prevents us from seeing anything significant outside of a few isolated showers, and that is about it. And again, you can see it at various levels of the atmosphere, that all setting up, keeping us protected, but the southeast and the mid-Atlantic and the southern mid-Atlantic seeing the rainfall. Even at 700 millibars, we don't really see any potential for rainfall until again next week. We have a cold front moving through for tonight into tomorrow, and that's going to introduce the potential for some showers. But again, I'm not seeing anything that is impressive or heavy at all in this setup here at all for us. So I understand. I've been getting a lot of emails like, hey, where's the rainfall? We really need a rainfall. And right now, not really much really to show in terms of any type of heavy rainfall for us or beneficial rainfall. You can see a few showers here, some convective showers setting up for Thursday, tomorrow. So for some brief heavy downpours, but really the whole region needs a region-wide moderate rainfall event that can last for a couple of days. And you see on the synoptic pattern here, synoptic model on the European, there is our hurricane lifting northward. Talking about models, let me touch on this before I start taking all the questions and whatnot. There are a lot of TV stations, especially that I'm seeing down southbound by Florida, using mesoscale models to forecast for the hurricane. And the problem with that is that those mesoscale models are featuring a lot of convective feedback error. One of them is the graph, which is using AI data. It has been much further east than the ensemble guidance, the operational guidance, but more importantly, what the National Hurricane Forecast is. And the problem with that is that it's creating a lot of confusion because there's people in the panhandle thinking they're not going to see any storm because they saw in the news that their fancy graph model, which is nothing more than the IBM model trying to improve, and it's creating a lot of confusion. It's a big problem. And it comes down to how you use the right tools, okay? And the reason why I'm bringing this up now is that I guarantee you they're going to try to pull the same thing when we get winter storms here and when we start to get any type of tropical system or any type of rainstorm. Here's the problem with the graph model. And you might see it on news stations. You might even see it on major news stations like NBC and whatnot. And that is that, first of all, it's a model in training with its AI. Okay, so you are the guinea pig when they send this out. Okay. Second, and the bigger problem is that it's not meant to handle synoptic questions. It's meant to handle mesoscale questions. So you could use it during a severe thunderstorm event. But in terms of where is a hurricane or a storm going to track, you want to use your traditional synoptic models for that because then it's able to handle things like the upper level load development. If it doesn't handle the upper level load development well, and you have all this convective feedback error in it, this is how you get a major hurricane slamming into the Florida Peninsula rather than moving into the Florida Panhandle. And there are people who should not be using those models who should know better. Okay? Now, I know that it's going to get you views and clicks and this and that. And in some cases, you might be contractually required to share that model. And I get it. Money makes the world go round. But there should be a huge disclaimer because you're confusing people when they're looking at the National Hurricane Center forecast and the radar presentation you just showed. And when there's that much of a difference, you really shouldn't be using it. But that's just my 2 cents. This is why I don't do TV, to be completely frank. This is why I don't do the traditional media, because I look at that and I've seen that, and this goes back to like 2000, really like 24 years ago, where I was interning at a station, and I was in college, and we were forecasting 1 to 3 inches, but they told me no, put down 2 to 5. And I was like, but it's only going to be 1 to 3. Like, yeah, but people won't watch if it's under 3 inches. So put down 2 to 5, and then you'll get your 2 inches, and you'll still verify. And I felt disgusted by that because that isn't reality. So what can I say? Sometimes I just sometimes I get disappointed in what I see in media these days. So now I am going to take your questions, and while we're doing that, we're going to be keeping an eye on the evolution of our storm, see if we see anything interesting with the development of the low pressure system. And then, look, I get it. The northern mid-Atlantic, it's as dead and as quiet as you could possibly get for this time of year. But I figure if there's going to be some questions about this hurricane, I'll get some answers, and we'll get to it. Now, let's see here. We'll get first to all the questions from Premium Chat, and then get to your questions in social media. Pick out the best ones. And let's make sure that we got this down. Oh, actually, hold it. Before I get to the questions, I'm just going to pull up this. Just got new satellite data in. Remember what I was saying that I was trying to get rid of that dry air? Well, here's some of that dry air here and here. But look at the convection really starting to grow here. This is impressive. Let's see if we can zoom in more. There it is. That is some very impressive cumulus thunderstorm development here in this storm. 1, 2, 3. There's definitely some hot cores developing within the circulation, within the low-level circulation. I would not be surprised if I wake up tomorrow morning and I see a full eye on this. Because the dry air is getting driven out. It's moving into plenty of warm water. There's no shear. It's just a matter of getting the dry air out, and we're seeing that right now. Very impressive. Okay. Northern Hemisphere 250 millibar jets, 250 millibar level jets are utter chaos at the moment. Stacked wave breaks, contortions, you name it. Meanwhile, 10 and 70 millibar appears to have formed by Siberia better now than January through February, right? Yeah, I mean, the polar vortex is just starting to get its act together. The Siberian snowfall thus far has been above normal, so that's some interesting observations to see how that plays out. Meanwhile, we're seeing a lot of chaos in the polar and subtropical jet streams because, in my opinion, we're getting a lot of mixed signals into tropical forcing. The MJO is now moving through phase 6 and very weak phase 7. La Nina is trying to develop and take hold, but it's been taking forever to gain strength. The negative PDO has been a big influence since the summer, but that's about it. And now we're starting to get competing influences from the stratosphere. We're getting more high latitude blocking development. And so I think that is starting to create a lot of chaos, and that's going to continue on through the fall. Figured more people would have joined already with the hurricane. Well, you know, the one thing I've noticed when it comes to tropical systems, it just kind of depends on whether or not it impacts anybody in your family and whatnot. What are the shower chances for Saturday morning in Somerset? I have an outdoor soccer photo schedule. Not anything widespread. There's going to be a few showers that are going to be developing, capable of a brief heavy downpour or two, but they're going to be pretty isolated. Let me see if I can find data on that. Let's see here. So, in the morning hours, when I see this signal here, this is going to really be a lot of low clouds. And then you got some pesky isolated showers and some drizzle. So it's not going to be sunny, but it's not going to be a washout either. So basically it's going to do something like Sandy in Georgia and the southeast after making landfall. I guess you could kind of say that. I mean, it's not the same track, but it's certainly going to have some major. It's going to have worse impacts than what we saw with Sandy. If it actually reaches Category 3 or 4, you're talking about a coastline that is relatively shallow, much more than New Jersey, driving all that water in. I mean, it's going to be a major problem with coastal flooding and storm surge. Let's see. Yeah, it's the Eagles. That's right. Yeah, Cowboys and Giants tomorrow night. That's right. And the Eagles are down in Tampa. And the weather itself in Tampa for the Eagles game will be fine. You know, the problem is that, you know, you might be dealing with a lot of destruction around there. The stadium might be damaged a bit. So who knows? So hopefully the NFL is doing better than Major League Baseball when it comes to adverse weather. Don't get me started on that. I can rant on that for about an hour and a half. Are the Royals going to be able to make it to Atlanta by Friday? Well, there we go. I don't know. I know the storm will be lifting through by then. The storm will be done in Atlanta by then. But whether or not you can actually fly people in Well, then again, they probably have private jets or whatever. So, it's going to be close. It's going to be interesting, that's for sure. What category storm do you think Helene will be when it reaches landfall? Either a strong category 3 or a weak category 4. So, unfortunately, either way, any way you slice it, it's going to be pretty nasty. And I say that based on the environment that is showing up, especially that strong divergence and diffluence I was showing you, combined with what the model guides are saying, and then you throw in the very warm waters that are in place, there's nothing really to impede it. Only thing that could really impede that type of intensification is if we get maybe an eye wall replacement cycle at just the right time, or we get another pocket of dry air. The good news with it moving so fast is that the time that the storm has for intensification is kind of limited in a window. Problem is that once it gets going, as we've seen with other storms, it can really grow and intensify very quickly. Rob asks, even Steve, you brought up a good point about creating confusion with messaging. I am very surprised at messaging in the public statements that are put out by the NHC. You have recently read one for fringe areas. Winds expected 15 to 20 miles per hour. Prepare for greater than 74 mile per hour winds. I think part of this is, and I want to be really careful, but their programming in terms of trying to fill, look, these guys aren't writing out every forecast, right? So they get like a grid matrix of what they're expecting, and then the computer spits it out, okay, as far as the forecast. It's kind of like very, 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 very base AI type stuff. It's been around for decades. And basically what happens is that you put in the general forecast and it spits out very basic wording. So as a result, you end up with those errors, and it's really, really not good. But they don't have enough manpower to cover every forecast in every location. So you end up with these errors, which is a big problem because then people read it and they're completely confused with what they're supposed to be seeing and what they should be expecting. And it's unfortunate. And you have interaction with the National Hurricane Center is one government agency within NOAA, while the individual offices are also doing their thing. So they'll try to use the wording that's in the National Hurricane Center forecast. At the same time, they're trying to put in their forecasts. So it leads to a jumbled mess, unfortunately. What does the SOI look like? And La Nina plus, how are the rest of the sea surface temperatures? And also any tropical activity in Western Pacific. Nothing right now in the Western Pacific, but I expect that to pick up soon, possibly in the next 5 to 7 days. The SOI, let me see, I didn't pull up. Let me see if I can find the SOI. There we go. Let me pull it up for you. Give me a couple minutes. And I will pull it up. And right there. Okay. So the latest SOI has been steadily, it's weakened a little bit, but overall, the overall average is for it to strengthen it into a positive state. So this I would call pretty much neutral at this point. I really don't consider something La Nina until you have to at least get over 5, over 10, stay there, right? So right now we're kind of at a neutral state. The daily contributions, that's influenced by the phases in your MJO. So when your MJO is in phases 7, 6, stuff like that, you end up with more of a negative phase. When it's in 2, 3, 4, well, really 3, 4, and 5, that's when we really push into these positive numbers like what we had here, we had over here, which really pushes your SOI averages into a positive state. Right now, this is a weak signal. Not really seeing anything all that impressive. In terms of the sea surface temperatures, nothing really too outrageous. Let me see if I can pull that off again. Give me 1 minute. Let's see. I think it's somewhere around here. Here we are. And we'll go back. To here. Okay. And the sea surface temperatures continue to feature a negative PDO signal right here in comparison to the boiling water that's here over to the south of the Aleutian Islands. Our La Nina is starting to get its act together. Okay, it's getting a little bit stronger under 3 and 3.4. The Atlantic remains warm. No real change from there. We are seeing a little bit of cooling here, so that's certainly an interesting signal to keep an eye on. This signal here would continue to support our negative NAO pattern that we keep on seeing. Let's see what else. And basically, it's setting up for a typical east-based La Nina with a negative PDO influence so far. We'll see if that continues to play out as we move forward. Are we looking at October snowfall this year with the weak PV? It's very interesting to see. And I know that Dr. Drew Cohen is watching this very much as well. With the weak nature of the polar vortex so far in September, I'm not sure if that plays out for October and November. And there's a lot of uncertainty. And there, like I said, when someone like Dr. Drew Cohen is kind of like, I'm not sure what to make of this, that is something just to keep in the back of your mind. Like, this guy studies this for a living all day. That's like his thing. The above normal snowfall has my attention. I don't use it as, well, we have above normal snowfall, therefore you'll get a negative NAO. I use it as you have above normal snowfall in Siberia, so you have a trigger that is capable of disrupting the polar vortex as long as the polar vortex doesn't get too strong to begin with. So we have to keep an eye on that and see how that plays out. Your winter preview hints have been very interesting so far this year. Any wild card aspects that you're considering? How they all interact. You see, okay. One thing you're probably not going to hear in your winter forecast is thoughts about what happened with this hurricane season. Think about this here. La Nina was supposed to ramp up and drive up this hurricane season, right? Didn't exactly happen. Why? That is something I am working on to figure out. And I think part of that has to do with the slow nature of this La Nina and the way that it impacted tropical forcing and the way that it impacted the MJO. But how does that translate going forward? And how does that factor interact with the other factors we are dealing with right now? That I don't know. Your point about working in TV is spot on. Back in the 90s. Yep. It also looks like it will be a large storm. What adds to impact, especially which adds to impact, especially as the windshield is larger overall and could push more water. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this storm is going to be a real problem for the region, unfortunately. And I mean, I'm very, very concerned about this setup here. Now, on top of that, I was a little bit vocal about the use of some of the models a couple days out from this storm, 7-10 days out. Not that you can't use models, but the way they were being used. Like Cat 6 hurricane hitting this and hitting Louisiana and so on and so forth. And the problem with that is that you just create a whole lot of confusion and a lot of fear. And what you don't want to do is have fear. You want to be prepared. And what they were doing was not preparing people. They were just trying to scare people. Let me go back to the satellite. We're getting more images, new images. And boy, this is getting interesting now. Look at how this convection is forming now. Okay, all right. Let's see here. I would also note that being a concise writer is a very different skill from forecasting itself. It definitely can be. All right, well, my wife's telling me that there's a lot going on in YouTube. Holy smokes. Well, let's see. Let's answer the best one here. Let's see. Okay, I'm not going to build an ark. Not my thing. I don't build anything.
You're not handy.
Is a faster interaction with the upper level low over the Midwest affect the speed? Yes. Yeah, it basically funnels the storm right into the coast. Absolutely. You sound tired. A bit. Yes. I mean, I've had a busy couple of days for a variety of reasons, and I am a bit tired. I'm like trying. Honestly, I was really pushing myself to go and do the live chat tonight. I'm like, we have a hurricane. I got to do this. But I am, for whatever reason, I am run down. I didn't even go to the gym today. That's something. When I'm like, I don't know, something must be. I'm just going to rest a little bit. As you see, I appreciate it. Tyler has a special on the way. Can't believe it's already the end of September. Hope you and everyone. Yeah, I know. This year flew by.
And we're almost at the end of it.
My son and I are supposed to tent camping Friday night and Saturday in Manalapan. Oh, I know where you're going. I used to be a Boy Scout. I know exactly where you're going. How much rain do you expect? Not a lot of rain. I'm not expecting heavy rain, but do expect like some drizzle, some damp conditions, especially in the morning hours. And you could get a brief shower, like a moderate downpour, but nothing like heavy. No, I'm not expecting anything heavy. Let's see. Does the storm have a chance of becoming a Cat 5? I don't want to completely rule it out, but the problem with a Cat 5 hurricane forecast is that the window for it to intensify to that rate, that would be record-breaking intensification rate, and I'm not comfortable enough to forecast something like that, but I can't rule it out either. With the El Nino event last winter and the possible return of La Nina conditions, is there any usefulness or significance in analyzing past analog winters? I really don't do that anymore because you got to factor in climate change and also the impact of the volcano that we had. So I don't really find them useful, to be honest with you. Other people do, but that's not really my thing. New York City Mets on TV keep mentioning we need rain. Yes, we do. We definitely do. We're moving headlong into a drought at this rate. Any thoughts of a major cold outbreak second week of October? Too far out. Too many factors. I wouldn't really focus on it all that much. Let's see here. Past couple of weeks, solar activity overall appears to have dropped off from the level. Yeah, I mean, I think we hit our peak. I think we're heading towards we're starting to head down in the other direction. So I definitely think we're definitely moving away from that solar activity. I think that's pretty much where we're at. Guys, I'm feeling a little off right now, so I'm going to call it a night right now. I'm starting to lose some of my voice. But again, we'll keep an eye on the storm. I'll continue to have updates and continue to keep an eye on the developments of our storm as we move forward. Thank you again for joining. Excellent questions. And as always, stay safe out there.